Welcome everybody to this episode of the Bob Pizzini Show with me, your host, Bob Pizzini. Hey, super special day today. We're at the Podfinity Studios near West Palm Beach, Florida. And I have an incredible guest, Rich Garner, former Navy SEAL, Buds Class 132, back in 1984, which is the year I came in the Navy as well. So we probably have, a birth date right around.
Yeah, some same experience.
Right around the same time frame. But Rich is president of Hold the Reins Foundation, and I'm going to talk a little bit about Hold the Reins, and then we're going to talk to Rich about how he got into Hold the Reins after a very successful career as a Navy SEAL. So Hold the Reins was founded by Michael Hall, who spent his career as a U.S. Navy SEAL and recognized the need to establish an early intervention mechanism to reduce suicide and divorce rates in the special warfare community. So special warfare, Navy special warfare, means Navy SEALs basically. And particularly with 20 plus years of deployments and warfare, suicide, PTSD, TBI, right, traumatic brain injury, post-traumatic stress disorder, and issues at home are prevalent throughout not only the Navy SEAL community, but the community that I come from, Navy EOD, Army Special Operators. So anyway, Michael Hall decided to do something about it, and he made Rich his president, which is pretty awesome. Due to the extraordinary pressures they face, service members are often faced with problems such as PTSD, depression, anxiety, and other health conditions that can dramatically affect their daily lives. Because of this, two common and heartbreaking issues that are pervasive in the service member community: divorce and suicide. And I know that's it's very personal and close to all of us in the special operations community. Fortunately, there are many therapeutic tools and outlets that have been proven to be effective at helping members restore normalcy in their lives and reintegrate back into healthy routines. The goal at Hold the Reins is to provide access to early intervention tools using a functioning farm that offers training with horses and animals, including horseback riding and animal wellness sessions. I've personally gone to 2 or 3, not with Hold the Reins, but I've gone to 2 or 3 different equine therapy is what it's, I think, generally referred to as, and it's incredible, and I really can't wait to talk about that. So Rich, welcome to the Bob Pizzini Show.
Thanks, Bob.
So a long setup there, but I think it's required because what you did in your previous life was significant and important, and what you're doing now is significant and important. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up on a cattle ranch in eastern Oregon and lived an idyllic, out in the country cowboy lifestyle.
Wow, that does sound pretty cool. So you grew up raising cattle and all the horsemanship that goes with that, I would imagine.
So horses and cattle, and then 5th generation horsemen.
Wow.
My dad taught me what I knew early on about riding and handling horses and livestock, and by the time I was 16, I was starting colts and riding the range and roping and doing all that stuff.
Was that your sport kind of during your teen years in high school, or did you play other sports?
When I was 12 years old, my dad came to me and said, well, your sisters aren't going to want a ranch when they grow up. I need to give this thing to somebody someday. Are you willing to come to work full time? 12 years old. And of course, what 12-year-old young man, especially back then, didn't want to go to work full time as a cowboy? And I said, yeah, you bet, Dad.
Yeah.
He goes, I can't pay you, but eventually it'll all be yours. And I was like, okay. So from the ripe old age of 12, I worked full time, except for the hours I was in school. He allowed me one spring or fall sport, and other than that, I was working the ranch full time.
No kidding. Wow. So what was that fall sport or spring sport?
So I played football in the fall.
Okay.
And then I wrestled through the winter time.
Wow.
And then I played baseball in the spring initially, but by the time I went to work, then I wanted to play football. It seemed more fun.
Okay. So your first job, and probably your only high school job, was on the ranch, or did you have any other jobs?
Yeah. So I was. My parents didn't let me slack off kind of in school.
Sounds
so
like it.
By the time I was in the 11th grade, I had enough credits to graduate.
Oh.
My parents were selling the ranch in Oregon, buying a bigger one right across the border in California.
Wow.
So if I were to go to California, there'd be new requirements, another full year in school. So I petitioned the principal at the school and said, hey, can I graduate a year early? And ultimately, I graduated from high school 1 month after my 17th birthday.
Holy cow.
So I was extremely young.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow. And then, did you have any other employment before you joined the Navy?
So in that transition process from Oregon to California, my parents were gone. I was commuting home on the weekends to work. But I worked as a mechanic at a local garage and did that for about 4 or 5 months, and then full-time on the ranch for a few years before I joined the Navy.
Wow. Okay. And what led you to join the Navy?
You ever see those recruiting commercials and you're like, what sort of an idiot would fall for that? And so, 20 degrees below zero, it's January, I've been wet, cold, tired. Sleep deprivation was a real thing when you're putting up hay out in the high desert.
Wow.
And so we came in and there was some playoff football game and the helicopters came over the horizon. It says, we'll take you from high school to flight school.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, I bet those guys are warm and dry. And so the next day I got my pickup and I drove 150 miles to the nearest recruiter. And long story short, I joined the Navy and ended up as an air crewman in a helo squadron and a search and rescue swimmer.
Okay, I was going to say, because I think that was an Army commercial you referred to.
That was an Army commercial.
I remember that, yeah. But ultimately you made the right decision, you joined the Navy.
Joined the Navy and did a deployment as an air crewman.
Okay.
And all along the way, I'm especially through search and rescue swim school, I'm exposed to Navy SEALs. I'm like, that's where I want to go.
Yeah, wow.
That's the thing for me. So after that first deployment, I went to BUD/S.
Okay, cool. So you had to take the screening and
Right.
and obviously there was no issue with that. I don't know if you recall, like when I did my screening for Navy dive school, like 30 people show up for the swim and 3 people, pass it. So, and I'm sure your experience was the same.
Yeah, it was interesting. I actually got screened all by myself. I was on deployment. There was a SEAL that happened to be in Subic Bay in the Philippines and got off the ship for an afternoon and went and did my screening test. And my aircrew buddies during the swim, he's like, hurry up, tapping his watch. And I'm swimming thinking there's no way I'm that slow. And I finished like a minute and a half faster than I needed to. And I'm like, Jerry, come on, now I got to go run and do the other stuff. So, everybody's got their unique experience.
Yeah,
but,
that's cool. So then you went to BUD/S, what year, 1984?
1984.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, it's a lot different now than it was then. I just went to a graduation recently, so my son and my son's best friend, these young men grew up together, and my son is now in his 3rd year at Virginia Tech, and his best friend finished SQT. He's a full-up Navy SEAL back at Little Creek.
Very good.
Really getting after it. But we went to the graduation out there, and the SQT is the part that's a lot different than when you went through.
Right.
But still, an incredibly challenging program, and only the best of the best make it through that. What was your first SEAL team?
So I went to SEAL Team 1 and wanted to stay on the West Coast and did a deployment, and we were fortunate for some reason, and I think it was probably the leadership of the platoon I was in. We got to do a lot of interesting things and burned up a lot of ammo and trained to take down ships. Oddly enough, even back then it was Iranian ships. And so came back from that deployment, and I was talking to somebody who'd been in the teams a long time, and I said, does it get any better than that? And they said, well, there's no war. No, not really. And so I was kind of thinking about getting out of the Navy, and the guys from Dam Neck were screening. Yeah. And so I screened, and 3 weeks later I started Green Team.
Wow.
So it was quick.
Yeah, it was quick. So you did one platoon, basically?
One platoon, and then ended up at Dam Neck.
Wow, okay. And spent the rest of your career there?
I was there for 7 years.
Okay.
Yeah, and then transitioned over to Little Creek, took shore. I was at about 13, 14 years at that point.
Okay.
Went to Little Creek for shore duty, and then ended up taking a 15-year early retirement in 1996.
Oh, the Terra.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah, Temporary Early Retirement Authority, I believe is what that was called.
Yeah.
Okay, wow, that's pretty cool. I was in Sigonella in 96.
All right.
So when that thing came out, and, overseas, Italy, forward deployed, EOD mobile unit. And, of course, I didn't have 15 years at the time. I was probably 9 or 10, but no, we were the same. We had to be the same year for year. Huh. But I was really enjoying my career at that point. So you took the Terra. What'd you do next?
So I took the Terra and then ended up starting the company in Virginia Beach, and so in the communications business, and it blew up and grew and grew. and got bigger than I could handle. And I had 8 retail locations, a bunch of employees.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden the wars kicked off. And I started looking at that thinking, that looks like a lot more fun than what I am doing. And I don't know if it was fun or not, but there were some SEALs that were down at Blackwater, and I got a hold of them and said, hey, is there anything for me to do? And spent the next 5 years in Iraq.
Wow.
Afghanistan, North Africa, Southern Philippines.
Holy cow.
Yeah, so for another decade or so.
Yeah.
Working most of those projects for the U.S. government, different agencies.
Okay.
And then...
so in air quotes, a private contractor?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Let's go back to the communications business for a minute. How and why did you establish that?
So when I had first retired, I wasn't wealthy by any means. With that early retirement, it was 37.5% of cheap base pay.
Yeah, right.
But I had done everything at that point that you could do in the teams, and I'm thinking, well, what do we do next? Right? Still, again, peacetime Navy SEAL. I mean, we'd had our little conflicts in Panama and so forth. But,
yeah.
So I started building saddles. On the side, saddles and tack and leather things. And I'd been doing that when I was on active duty, making knife cases and holsters for guys.
Oh, wow.
And so somebody came around selling cell phones. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Nextel phones with two-way radio.
Yeah.
I said, what's a guy got to do to be able to sell these things? And he goes, and he looked at me, of course, cowboy, cutting leather. And he's like, it would be right for you.
Yeah.
And so... long story short, I started working for a company selling phones, and then one day I asked the guy, I said, why do I need you? Why can't I do my own business? He's like, well, you'd never get a dealership. And
you got
immediately
one.
I launched, and ultimately in the next couple of years, we're activating about 1,000 phones a month from Richmond all the way to the ocean front.
Wow.
I had 35 people selling, and
wow,
it was busy.
Yeah, holy cow. So when the wars did break out, or when you, I guess what I'm saying is, did you try and transition that business to the government, or was that was not the government?
No, not at all.
The government was not a customer.
And it grew so fast and so big. We were a victim of our own success because we were grossing almost $300,000 a month.
Wow.
But that required cash flow to continue stocking hardware. And I learned a hard lesson about business, that the big carriers didn't want to be paying top tier commissions to guys like me. That if they allowed us to fail by not increasing our capacity to bring in the hardware, then they could break it up, pay smaller commissions to a bunch of other companies. So I immediately started selling off locations and deciding, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. Okay,
all right. Wow. So then you got into the private contracting world, went all over the place, and was that I think you said it, that was with several organizations?
So started out with Blackwater and Eric Prince, and ended up working on the ambassador's detail in Baghdad. And a variety of Department of Defense contracts all over Iraq. Logged about 50,000 miles on the roads of Iraq in a 5-year period.
So we have a mutual friend, Marty Strong. Did you see him in Iraq at all?
I've seen Marty many places in the world. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, he gets around, I've heard.
Yeah, he does. Can't squash that guy.
That's right. That's right. So, wow. Okay, and you did that for how many years then?
So I was in Iraq for 5 years, from 2004 to 2009.
Okay.
And then ran some contracts in and out of Afghanistan.
Okay.
Overseeing security for election process, and then same thing in South Sudan, Nigeria, some other places, and then some security contracts in southern Philippines and the Mindanao, Davao City, that area.
Yeah. Do you remember where you were in Iraq in 08, 09? And the reason I ask is that's when I was there.
Yeah, I was back in Baghdad at that point.
Okay. Okay. So I was down in Basra, Amara, near the Iranian border.
Yeah.
EOD guy, stuff coming through those waterways down there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to see how that transitioned. In the beginning, they were cell phone detonated. They were truly improvised explosive devices.
Yeah.
And then as things rolled along, all of a sudden, the bad guys are breaking them out of boxes, coming across the border. They're EFPs. They're they're tough to beat. And
fully assembled kits.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And to move in that country, I was in Mosul, Iraq in 2005, 2006. And it was a pretty ugly place to be.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Were you married at the time? Children at the time?
I was.
Okay.
Yeah, I had two out of high school, or one graduating high school, and two younger that were in school.
Okay, and and I'm asking that question as kind of a transition to what you're doing now, because you've seen, I'm sure, the struggles that a lot of not only active duty special operators have gone through, but what their family members have gone through as well. Mm-hmm. And first I'll ask you just quite bluntly, how did you keep things together with that heavy deployment schedule and being around things that are very unpleasant to be around?
Yeah, a lot of that was staying deployed, right? You've been there, you understand, and a lot of people that are going to see this understand that the pressure that you're under when you're in that combat environment is what keeps you functioning. Because when you take that pressure off the inner man that's moving at 1,000 miles an hour and drop us back into the civilian world where people are not moving that fast,
Mm-hmm.
That's when it gets difficult to relate to people. It gets difficult to manage your time.
Mm-hmm.
How do I manage my emotions? Because there's not that constant threat and pressure on you. And that fast mind movement and that trained, learned attention deficit disorder that serves us so well in a combat environment doesn't serve you well on the streets of America, right? And so then we see these compensatory mechanisms that guys use to slow down the inner man, and typically it's substance abuse, right?
Yeah,
everybody's
right.
an alcoholic, and then that starts destroying families and,
Yep.
and destroying personal lives and credibility. And so, how do you intercede and help a guy understand that, hey man, it's okay,
Yeah.
right? I know how you feel.
Yeah.
And I truly do know how they feel,
Yeah.
right?
So that's incredible, and it really positions you well to do what you're doing now. I belong to an organization called Warrior for Life Fund. You know a fellow by the name of Ryan Crowley?
I do not.
Okay, anyway, Navy SEAL captain, retired. What you do with horses, we do with hockey. We do it on the ice. But to your point, when you're downrange 1,000 miles an hour, you're hypervigilant, right? And when you come home, being hypervigilant at the dining room table is not appropriate. But being hypervigilant on the ice is appropriate.
Right.
And so,
Right.
and I personally went through the whole experience coming home from Iraq, just hypervigilant and who left that light on, and those types of things. And the
Right.
ice really provides an incredible release. And so anyway, Warrior for Life Fund, they built this whole program around it. It's incredible. But I also attended the equine, a few of the equine therapies. And how do you, with Hold the Reins, help people deal with the things we just talked about?
Yeah, it's interesting, Bob, because I'm not a therapist, and I think my strength is in the fact that I'm not a therapist. Because you take a special operator, put him in a room with a therapist, and I've had several guys say, well, all I say to them is whatever it takes to get out the door the quickest.
Yep.
Right. They don't want to deal with it. They don't want somebody digging into them.
Yeah.
Especially somebody that wasn't a special operator.
Yeah, right.
And so I've had these guys, they come out and they feel, interestingly enough, my call when he founded this, he'll tell the story and it's hilarious. He's like, well, I kind of thought I was inventing equine therapy because I knew what horses did for me. And he had a good friend in the teams that took his own life. And it kind of shocked Mike into, what do we do for these guys? Because it could happen to me, it could happen to you.
Uh-huh.
And he always felt like horses had helped him just being near them. And so when I had come out of Iraq in 2009, so I was no longer living overseas, but I was still deploying, bought a property in Chesapeake, started collecting horses because I had grown up with them. And I couldn't have told you at the time what was going on, but I was drinking a lot and collecting horses. Next thing you know, I've got 12 horses, building an equine facility. Somebody saw me working with a horse and said, would you ride my horse? And next thing you know, I'm a full-time professional horse trainer as well.
Wow.
And so in the last 10 to 15 years, I've certainly ridden well over 1,000 horses, dealt with thousands of clients, teaching them how to interact with their horses. And what I didn't realize early on was most of my clients on the East Coast are going to be 45 to 60 years old. They're going to be women, post children, get a horse and nothing works, right? And it would be frustrating for the cowboy Navy SEAL guy to be dealing with this woman who is, my horse won't, and she's getting tears and all upset. And finally one day I was like, this is not a horse to her. It's not livestock. She doesn't really want it to do the thing, what she wants. is to fulfill her emotional needs with the horse. And it, and okay, then that's what we're going to deal with, because this is what I do to make money at this point in my life. Fast forward to Mike Hall and Hold the Reins. I didn't realize that God was forming me to deal with the emotional side of horsemanship. And so when Mike showed up, I was ready. And he was referred to me through another Gold Squadron guy that I'd ridden a bunch of horses with. And Mike came out and he said, "Would you teach me horsemanship?" I said, "Yeah, you bet." And so after about 2 or 3 sessions, he said, "Would you be involved with Hold the Reins?" And I said, "You bet." He goes, "Well, that didn't take you very long." I said, "I've been waiting for this. I knew that my life has led me to this point. I'm ready to go." You know, and Andrew Carnegie, who created U.S. Steel, made a statement. He said, "When a man presented with all the facts to make a decision, he'll make the decision within 5 minutes, or he'll never make the decision." And I've always been kind of a guy that goes, "Okay, let's do that." And it's cost me, and it's been to my benefit many times.
I can totally relate. Believe me, I can relate to that. So I'm still in that phase. So I haven't grown up yet.
Yeah, well, there's no reason to grow up, right?
Yeah.
And so so Mike and I discussed where we wanted to go with it. And one of the first things, like, okay, this is kind of sensitive. We got to be a little touchy-feely here. I said, "Mike, we can't be team guys around these guys. We can't give guys a hard time and joke." Bob, about 6 minutes into the first session, that went out the window, right? No SEAL's going to trust you, or a special boat driver, an EOD guy. If you're not messing with them.
That's right.
But what we wanted to create was an environment where, special operations is a zero defect thing. You understand this with your background. You don't get to make mistakes. If you do, somebody dies. So to welcome the mindset into an environment where, you can make a mistake, in my opinion, and I handle horses on a level that is, it's hard to describe. It's energy from in me to energy in the horse. Getting along with horses that maybe somebody else can't, because you've got to understand the horse has a vote in all of this. And so to bring these guys in and start sharing that with them, I believe that there's no right or wrong in horsemanship. It's either safe or it's not. And so if it's safe, then it's either more or less effective and efficient. And so bringing special operators in and under the guise of teaching them high-level horsemanship, things that most people can't teach you, you're able to engage with them. And once they're with the horse and they start feeling that energy of the horse and the stillness, and a horse has no prefrontal cortex, so it can't make meaning of anything. So you and I, when faced with a situation, our computer kicks into high gear and we start trying to make meaning out of stuff. And that's where a lot of your trauma is stored there. Okay, this is like before. Oh no. A horse isn't like that. And so a horse moves towards what feels good and away from what feels bad. And so it forces you and I to be perfectly in the moment, because the horse isn't thinking about 5 minutes ago or 5 minutes ahead of now. It's right now.
Wow.
And so I'll have these guys with the horse and I'll say, "So Bob, what are you thinking about right now?" "Nothing, the horse." Right. And probably half of the men that have shown up have gotten either super weepy or out and out just broke down and cried.
Wow.
Because it's an environment that's absolutely safe. Look, everybody has stored up all these emotions.
For sure.
Right?
For sure.
And for them to be able to feel safe, I'm not going to tell anybody. I don't really care.
Yeah.
Right? You can't make up something I haven't heard before.
Yeah, right.
When it comes to the bad things that we do.
Yeah.
Right? And so for them to feel safe, and the horse doesn't judge. The horse ain't going to tell anybody.
Yeah.
Right? And the horse can't lie. The horse is absolutely 100% honest. And so I've got this little black horse that was born in my barn. I've had him for almost 12 years now. And if I've done 200 sessions with Hold the Reins, initial sessions where guys first come out, he's probably been used in 195 of them.
Wow.
And he and I are so close that if I have you get near that horse or get on him bareback or close physical contact, he's going to start indicating to me where you are emotionally on the inside.
No kidding.
And so, we'll mask things between you and me and other humans, but you can't mask it from the horse. The horse goes, "Nope, that's not how you're feeling."
And he's communicating with you.
Absolutely.
Holy cow.
I had somebody crawl up on a horse probably a week or so ago, a guy who's a dev group operator. And, we want to work with as many active duty as we can. If we can get the young ones before they deploy, great. We'll talk about that more. But this guy's up on the horse, and I said, the horse is talking to me about you. And he goes, what's he saying? I said, he's saying that you're not worried at all about him. I said, but you got a lot of stuff you're worried about. And he goes, horse isn't lying.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
And the horse gives different cues.
Yeah.
Right. If you're tense and worried about him, then he's going to be acting a certain way. And if you're completely relaxed, he's going to have a different affect and so forth.
Holy cow. You said something, it's okay to make a mistake. And I remember when I transitioned out of the military, for me that was like a relief valve that was lifting.
Yeah.
Like I'm in the private sector now, and it's okay to make a mistake, and you're not going to get killed or written up or beat up or injured or dead.
Right.
In the private sector, and that was really quite a relief. You also mentioned some of the higher level horsemanship, I think you said. Mm-hmm. What's an example of higher level horsemanship?
So, Bob, if you come out, I have you groom the horse, and we're talking, and the whole time I'm trying to figure out, how do we best serve Bob? How do we make sure that we're not making mistakes here?
Yeah.
Right? How do I make sure that when you leave, you either want to come back when you need help, or you leave going, man, this was time well invested. And so higher level horsemanship. I want people to understand that the horse is a creature of energy. That horse can feel, not consciously, but they can feel your heartbeat, the electrical field around your heart from about 15 feet away.
Wow.
Right? And so the horse's heart rate's about 45 beats per minute. And when you come walking into the ring, yours might be 60, but likely it's 80 to 100. Right? A little bit of excitement going on there. And so, as an example, I had a guy come in who had experienced some death of some teammates, and man, his shoulders were up here, and he was tight, and he's this big dude, and I'm trying to kind of engage, and he's talking, but you can tell he's just super guarded. And I had a 24-year-old thoroughbred mare standing in a round ring, and she's just eating some hay, and I'm thinking, let's let the horse handle this. I said, come on, man, let's go in here and let me introduce you to this horse.
Wow.
So we walk in, and she stops, and she looks at him, and I'd never seen one do it before or since, and she just walked right up to him, Bob. She put her forehead right in his chest, and she just kind of leaned against him. And he looks at me, he goes, what do I do? I said, just softly pet her, let's see what happens. And he just started kind of rubbing her neck, and his shoulders came down. And he started to cry.
Wow.
And then she stepped back, she looked at him, she looked at me, and went back and started eating her hay. He goes, what just happened?
Yeah.
I said, well, we're all in here together. You were obviously dysregulated. She felt it. She wanted you at the same level she was for her own comfort. And so she came over and she helped you out with it. I said, how do you feel? He goes, that was incredible.
Yeah.
Right? It's not something you can describe. It's something you have to experience. And when it happens, and I see it happen repeatedly with these guys, and we do sessions with their wives. You come out, I work with you, and I go, Bob, you're welcome to bring your wife anytime you want now. So, you're dumb enough to say, hey, honey, you want to go ride a horse? And so couples come out, and I will essentially do what we call session one with the wife while the husband observes.
Okay.
And I'm going to say if it's 50% of guys get real emotional, it's probably 90+% of the wives that do. And because they're carrying a lot.
For sure.
And that tension that we feel in combat, they live with all the time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them have kids, the husband deploying and all the other things, and they got to hold it all together.
Yeah.
And then the hero comes home and wants to take charge of the house again, and they're like, oh, how do I manage all this?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so to allow them to be emotionally safe, here's a horse, he's not going to hurt you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm here, I trust him.
Yeah.
And so to watch that happen, and then I'll have husband and wife wrap up the session. Usually they're riding horses bareback around the ring, laughing, having fun with it. And so then they get in their car and they make that hour to hour and a half drive back to the Tidewater, and they've got something completely new to talk about.
For sure.
Right? It's something, there's no
New and
baggage,
pleasant.
nothing.
Yeah.
They can just, man, what was this? What was that? Did you see that horse? And whatever.
That is so cool. Because it's critical you bring the spouses in. When it comes to symptoms of TBI, like sleep disturbance or anger issues, etc., it's the spouse who's the first one, the spouse and the family members. They're the first ones to see it, and the first ones to deal with it. And, you know, I know from all the programming that I've been through that, you know, at first they're like, oh, he just needs to decompress, or, you know, like you said, the hero comes home and kind of disrupts things.
Right.
And so it's wonderful that husband and wife can do that together. And so this facility exists where right now?
So it exists in Cortland, Virginia.
Okay.
My wife and I own 34 acres.
Oh, okay.
And,
so you're not in Chesapeake anymore?
Not in Chesapeake anymore.
Okay.
And for a couple of reasons, but the big one is the environment out there. It's a lot drier. There's a little bit of contour to the land.
Okay.
And so keeping horses in the swamp is a lot more difficult than keeping horses where we do now.
Yeah, okay.
And so we have our own horses on the property. Hold the Reins has a couple of very nice donated horses that we use now in the program.
Okay.
So there's about 12 horses on the property.
Okay.
Got some pregnant brood mares, which is going to provide a lot of fun for people here later in the spring and summer to be around all those babies. And,
okay.
and so, and there is a structured program. There's a goal with what we do, but that can change at a moment's notice, right? If a guy needs something different. As an example, I had a couple of guys out, and my wife had something she wanted picked up and moved. And I'm like, well, that's like 400 pounds. I'm going to grab the tractor. So I get the tractor, and by the time I get back, the two operators had picked it up and carried it for her, and they're looking at me, and they're looking at the tractor, and I go, you want to drive it? And they're like, yeah. So they're driving it around, and guy number one gets out, and guy number two's like, can I drive it? I go, yeah, go ahead. So he's driving around picking stuff up and playing. So as we wrap up, I take them back to their, cool guy trucks, and I go, so, the horses, this, that, emotion, what was the best part about the day? And they both go, the tractor.
That's funny. That reminds me, when I was a kid, I had every odd job in the world, and one of them was cleaning stalls. Like, I cleaned horse stalls. Yeah. About 25 Arabians, something like that, this Arabian horse farm. But part of that cleaning was, I'd shovel everything, sling everything into the wagon on the tractor, right, this Massey Ferguson, and then I'd take it out and spread it in the in one of the fields out there. So
it's got to happen, and I've had a couple of therapists that work with Spec War, and one of them calls it her manure therapy.
Yeah, there you go.
I love it. Out and just clean up, and there's something about serving the animals that serve us, taking care of them, and some of these guys have spent a lot of time just cleaning up, and one of the things I talk to them about is every time you walk into a corral to clean it up, the first thing you need to do is go interact with the horse. Acknowledge the fact the horse is there, he's paying attention to you, he's staying out of your way, and to watch them go from horse to horse, and to see how that transpires.
I wish I would have known some of this stuff about the horse when I was that kid cleaning those stalls.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that would have been much more enjoyable at that point. So you mentioned how the horse wants people in the horse's presence to be calm, so the horse can stay calm. And I'm paraphrasing what you just said. And service dogs, I think, are trained to have a similar calming effect. And dogs and farms kind of go together. Right. So do you have dogs out there? Do you have service dogs at all? Or?
So we've had guys that brought their service dogs. We've got an Australian Shepherd on the farm he's a pretty cool dog. Okay. And oddly enough, I found myself single, and horses brought me together with a woman that's younger than me. And so at my age, I have a 4.5-year-old daughter. Wow. Who is a heck of a horseman. And, wow. She was standing there being shy one day, and I said, well, tell him something about your pony. And she looks at the guy, and she goes, she was about 3. She goes, you got to give that horse some slack. Don't be jerking on those reins. And he's like, yes, ma'am. So the dog is actually hers, and if you come around, he will bite you if you're a male and you get near her.
Yeah.
And I'm not present, he will light you up.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah. So yeah, dogs are, but they learn differently than humans, and they interact, or excuse me, horses, and they interact differently than a horse will. A dog has a primitive prefrontal cortex, so your dog gets into the trash, and 8 hours later you come home and he's in the corner going, I'm about to get my butt kicked, right? Because he can remember that he did something bad. Your horse can figuratively get in the trash, and 2 seconds later they're looking at you like, why are you upset? Because they can't remember they did something bad.
Yeah.
And horses, it's almost never the horse's fault. We set them up for failure. So one of the things, the higher level things, I've had people that have ridden for years, and I start talking about the rocking of the rib cage, and they'll say, no, I know this, the horse up and down, but nobody's ever taught me about that. Well, this actually happens when that foot goes forward and that foot. And so when I've got them riding bareback, I start showing them these things. And the reason that's important is if you keep your legs here when the horse tries to rock back, it's set up perfectly to make a left-hand turn. So you've made things easy for the horse. And so I'm taking adult learners, guys like us, and teaching them these things now so that I can, in a few days, I've got guys riding where people look at them and go, man, you've been riding your whole life, huh? They're like, I just learned 3 days ago.
Wow.
Right? Because these guys can learn as adults, but then we're teaching them all the good stuff in the beginning. Right? And simple things. If you remember the fire triangle, heat, fuel, oxygen, and fight fires by taking away one of those, right? Well, with your horse, you've got a little triangle. You need to have their respect, their attention, and their understanding of the task you're asking them to do.
Wow.
Right? If they don't understand the thing, well, I've got to help them understand it. A horse is a prey animal, so he knows he's lunch for something instinctually.
That's eyes looking. That's eyes on the front, right?
That's right. And so he's automatically, what's that?
Yeah.
What's that? So if you don't have your horse's attention, you can't ask it to do something. It's like your teenager looking at their cell phone. You're like, hey.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't work. And so if you have their attention, their respect, and their understanding, and the respect is such a huge thing. I will have people that have ridden for 40 years, and I'll say, your horse has to respect you, right? Oh, yeah. How do you demonstrate respect to your horse? And they look at you, and I'll go, it's rhetorical, means you ain't got to answer it. And they'll just look at me, and they go, I never thought of that. It's horsemanship, horse-human relationship. It's a relationship. So if we don't respect the horse and demonstrate it in a way the horse can perceive, then we fail, right? And so when you dig into these things at a little different level of communication, people it's an epiphany. And now all of a sudden they're effective with a horse where yesterday they weren't. Because the horse has a vote.
And maybe now they communicate better in other areas of their life as well.
And we mentioned that EOD operator a little while ago.
Yeah.
And he said he was struggling with a horse, working with a SEAL in another organization, and the guy said, so where else in your life does that affect you?
Yeah, right.
And the guy was like, oh, and I stole it instantly. When these guys start having a situation or a breakthrough, I'll say, well, where else in your life could that benefit you? And I'll say, you don't have to answer it, Bob. That's between you and yourself. But just know that this works. And I've had guys say, I think about my interaction with the horse when I start getting frustrated at work or with my wife, my kids. And there's 1,000 metaphors. I had a guy who was a retiring SEAL Master Chief and from SEAL Team 8, and he's out there working with his horse. And sometimes we'll use horses that are a little green and a little skittish, and he's holding the horse right here. And I said, so why are you holding the horse right there? He goes, I don't want her to do anything. I said, why don't you just trust her a little bit? And he goes, is the length of the lead rope indicative of how much you trust the horse? And I went,
wow.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, actually it is. I said, you have teenage kids? He goes, I do. I said, do you hold on to them here? Or do you hold on to them here where you're available?
Yeah.
But if you start to make a mistake, I'm here to correct it.
Yeah.
He goes, well, what if and he took the lead rope and he took it all the way out to the end, 12 feet long. He goes, what if I hold it here? I said, I don't know, I would indicate you didn't care much. I said, there's probably a lot of parents out there like that, right? He goes, yeah. He goes, I want to hold it right about here.
Yeah.
And so, these things pop up, and
For sure.
for thinking operators, hopefully we can take advantage of it.
What's the intake process?
So people, guys refer guys typically.
Okay.
Right? They can go to the website. There is an intake process at www.holdthereins.org.
Okay.
And you can communicate with the organization through there. My call gets those emails.
Okay.
And so that would be a way to come in. Therapists from the commands have referred guys to us.
Oh, okay.
We've gotten a lot of them from Little Creek. And generally it's going to be somebody referring somebody. But we have therapists outside the organization that are familiar with what we do. I had 2 Navy chaplains and a therapist show up to observe a session one day.
Huh.
And the guy that was supposed to be there didn't show up. He's like, I can't make it. And I said, okay, which one of you is going to be it? And one of the Navy chaplains says, well, I grew up with horses. Use him. And I said, I'm using you. But what happened was, and the therapist who was there to observe, she supposedly had an injury or something, and so I wasn't going to draw her into it.
Okay.
Right? So I've got these 2 Navy chaplains, and I'm working with them, and pretty quick this therapist's like, do you have a horse I could work with?
Wow.
And so I grab another horse, and all of a sudden I've got this person just laying on the horse crying and apologizing. I'm like, no. She's like, I dealt with a suicide this week. I'm dealing with all this stuff. I got no place to go. And then I look, and the therapist is talking, and she's melting down. She's like, I got no place I can go either. And I was like, thank you, Lord. I appreciate this opportunity to create a place where people can just, let it out.
Yeah.
Ooh, fine.
Yeah. Wow. Holy cow. So intake is a lot of referrals, and it's a website if people want to go to the website. And you mentioned these. You mentioned that you're not a clinician per se, right? You're a horseman.
Correct.
But you do. Did you just say you do work with clinicians, or they were just visiting that day? Or?
Absolutely. So, if I feel like I'm getting in over my head, I've got people I can call and say, hey, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Help. That's not happened to the point where I felt like I needed to make an emergency call to somebody.
Okay.
Mike and I talked early on, and we agreed, look, if we can head off 1 suicide and 1 divorce in the next 10 years, we're successful.
Yeah, for sure.
And in the first year, we had 2 guys that came back and reported. One, his buddies got to him when he had a gun in his mouth. And the other said, let's just say I was going to do something real stupid if I hadn't come here and started doing this.
Wow.
And it's not us. Right, I believe in God. I believe He sends these people to us. I believe He's in control of what we're doing, as far as we're open to allowing that to come through us.
Yeah. And
so I think those guys are there to be treated with respect and love, and we're just trying to do the best we can.
Wow, that's incredible. That is really, it's noble, and I realize, you're the last one to take any credit upon yourself, but noble, necessary. There's so many different things out there. And the thing is, again, my personal experience, what works for one doesn't always work for the other. It's great for people to have options.
That's right.
And like we said earlier, because again, I've been, through a few of the programs, when you get those psychoanalysts who ask you questions that you don't want to think about, you don't want to answer, and
right.
it's nothing against their profession or who they are or what they do, but they're digging deep they're taking us to places that we didn't like when we were there the first time, and why am I going to go back there? Especially with somebody who hasn't been there, as you indicated earlier. So this is just an incredible offering, I think. And is there like the next thing within Hold the Reins, or are you guys kind of steady as she goes? Is there are you looking to grow, or?
Yes. So when you work with active duty special operators, it's kind of a cool thing, right? And there's people that are outside of the community that would like to see it really grow. Like, man, this thing is so cool. And my thing is, no, the next guy coming down the driveway is the whole reason we're doing this.
Yeah.
We don't want to grow to the point where we start analyzing numbers.
Yeah.
And we need to be helping people. Yes, we're going to grow it. We would love to clone it on the West Coast. We got a bunch of operators out there.
Right.
And so that would be a goal that we're definitely wanting to pursue.
Okay.
And we've got special operators that are horsemen that are around the country that have expressed an interest in trying to help us out. Because it's difficult to find somebody that handles the horse in a safe and efficient manner and understands it, also has a background as an operator, right, and is willing to invest the time, effort, and energy into it.
Yeah, right. And the reason I ask that question is one of my children went through a very tough period during the teen years, and equine therapy was actually one of the things that helped my child get through, helped all of us really, but my child in particular get through a pretty tough period. So,
yeah, and I don't know that it's underestimated anymore. I think there's a lot of people that understand that there's a benefit there. You know, and I have worked with different organizations with equine assisted services in the past, but I will tell you that two of them, when I let people know that I was going to be president of the Hold the Reins, immediately distanced themselves. Like, oh, well, you know, if you're doing your thing, then look, if people listening to this, my wish is that everybody had a horse in their backyard that they could go out and spend time with. You know, my dad was orphaned when he was 2 years old, raised by his grandfather, and his grandfather was born in 1877. So I tell people I was raised by a man born in 1877.
wow.
But my dad, he said when he was young, things would get tough, and he'd run out of the house and run down to the barn. And he said he'd put his arms around that horse's neck, and he said he would cry and cry. And he said old Nancy never told his stories. She would just stand right there. And I was like, you know what? This is not new. Horse-human relationships have been going on forever.
Wow. Yeah. So, holy cow. Rich Garner, thank you so much. Do we leave anything out? Is there anything else that you think that our listeners should know?
No, I think we've covered about as much as we can without boring people.
Yeah. So, hey, thank you so much for making the trip and coming in and being on the show. And, you know, thank you most importantly for doing what you do.
Well, we appreciate the exposure, and, you know, God bless y'all.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.